everybody, and welcome back to another round of Modern Melee, as you can see, with a brand new playmat.
Wow.
And an updated logo and everything. We present you, of course, my name is Ginkgo.
And my name is Marco.
We present you today Teamer Crushcade on your left versus Eldrazi Tron on your right. Exciting matchup, actually.
Great matchup. And before we get into the matchup itself, we want to mention a couple of things. First of all, we listened to your suggestions and we are implementing deck lists finally. So you can find them in the description below or at the end of the video.
Yeah. And the second thing before this match actually begins, first, as you can see, we have a brand new playmat. Hopefully it will be available soon for everybody that wishes to acquire one. But in the meantime, we have the only copies left. Other things of note. Lurrus has been banned.
Wow, amazing. Finally, I should say.
So, before this match starts, we have, it seems, some mulligan decisions to go over. So I would like to ask you, what does Lurrus banning mean for you as a Hammer Time player?
Nothing much, to be honest. Hammer Time is one of those decks that didn't really care about it. It wasn't reliant on Lurrus. Let me put it like that, because it would be perhaps too much to say that it didn't care, but it's not reliant on Lurrus. Like decks such as that Shadow Grixis and perhaps even a Black-Red Rock.
The game has started. We see Crashing Footfalls suspended on 4 on your left and an expedition map being played by the Tron player. Now, we will definitely talk about Lurrus in a bit, probably a bit more than a bit. But in the meantime, we see a fetch land being played on your left and probably just the passing of the turn. So, Teamer Crashcade is an extremely interesting deck.
Yes, definitely. It's a deck that I like. I like the deck. I like the concept of the deck, and I like the cards that are in the deck list that you will be able to see at the end or in the description below. Jokes aside, I really like this deck, and I appreciate the depth that this deck brings, because only a good pilot can play this deck well.
So for anybody that doesn't know, this deck plays cascade spells. And it cascades into the only target, which is Crashing Footfalls, which makes 2 4/4 trampling rhinos. So to be able to do so, and we know that the only legal cascade cards in Modern are 3 and above, barring some special cases. To be able to do so, one must not have in their library, the whole library, 1-drops and 2-drops. Because when you cascade into the first thing that is mana value less than the card that you cascaded with. So in this case, if you cascade with Violent Outburst or the creature that cascades, what is the name of the creature? Shardless Agent.
Exactly.
Yes. They are both 3-drops, so you cascade into the first 2-drop or 1-drop, or in this case a 0-drop that you find from your library. To be able to cascade into rhinos themselves, you must not have any 2-drops or 1-drops. So this deck needs to get creative, and by which I mean it plays cards like Brazen Borrowers, Bone Crusher Giant, Fire Rise, and the Pitch Elementals to be able to circumvent this rule. So Brazen Borrower is in all zones except on the stack is a mana value 3 creature. But you can also do the Petty Theft, a half of Brazen Borrower, which returns an online permanent to an opponent's hand. And this is the 2 mana value spell. But everywhere else then on the stack, it's a 3 mana value spell, so this is one of the things that can circumvent this rule. Now we see quite a stacked hand from the player on the left, from the Crushcade player, but there are no lands as far as I can see, and on the right there is a Thought-Knot Seer being played from 2 and Eldrazi Temples, actually.
Yes, so definitely the Crashcade player has some mana issues, but getting that third mana will really unlock his hand. But that being said, as we can see, Petty Theft being played for 2 mana and Brazen Borrowing going on Adventure.
So this is a nice trick with cards like Thought-Knot Seer when they enter the battlefield, and they have both enter and leave the battlefield triggers. So when they enter the battlefield, you get to basically Thought Seize your opponent's hand. But also when they leave the battlefield, you get to draw a card. So what the Crushcade player did was, with the trigger on the stack, bounce the Thought-Knot Seer back to its owner's hand with the Petty Theft part of the Brazen Borrower, so they can draw a card, because it is the most likely target for the Thought-Knot Seer anyways. And we see there are 2 Cascade spells in their hand, 2 Prismatic commands actually, and some removal in form of either Jace or Fury, and both of those types are redundant. And we also see they drew a land, which is big game, actually.
Definitely. So I believe that Eldrazi... Okay, he chose Prismari Command. Also a very interesting card, Prismari Command. Crushcade, I believe, is the only deck that plays this card efficiently.
Yes. So Prismari Command is almost not playable in Modern.
Yeah.
So it does 2 damage to any target, it loots twice, and it can make a treasure and destroy an artifact. All of those things are fine, but for 3 mana are just overcosted. The trick is in the ability to be as flexible as possible. That's one thing. The other trick is that this card can be pitched to Fury. Exactly. That's just the gist of it. We see some picture taking, and the 2 tokens that you see on the battlefield are 2 rhinos that have been masterfully crafted on the blanks of Magic cards.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about the matchup. How does Crashcade fare against Eldrazi Tron, or how does Eldrazi Tron fare against Crashcade?
So this is actually a nice showing from both decks due to them both getting to do what they wanted to do. First of all, on your right, we have a lot of mana being produced by Eldrazi Temples, as we see the third one being fetched by the expedition map. On your left, we see a lot of power in the form of rhinos, in the form of 4/4 tramplers, and what the Eldrazi Tron has for them is pressure from the early game and a form of inevitability. They almost certainly have at least 1 copy of Giant Eldrazi in their deck, be it probably Ulamog, but maybe also Kozilek or even Emrakul, the old Emrakul. So if they come to 10 mana or a little bit less, maybe they will end the game. But in the meanwhile, their threats are 4/4s and 5/5s. And we see, on the other hand, 4 4/4s with trample from the Crushcade player, which is not only on par power level wise with Eldrazi's, but they got to do it with less resources.
Exactly.
So one thing that is true for both of the players is that both of the decks can be easily hated upon. In terms of some sideboard cards and the main board choices. So in order for the cascade to function, one must cast the spell from the exiled cards with the cascade, and this can be interacted with in myriad ways. One of them is a counter spell. The other ones are just cards that stop you from casting more than one spell a turn, and so back and so forth. On the other hand, Void Mirror completely shuts down the Eldrazi Tron player.
Of course, Void Mirror is not something that either of these decks wants to play in their sideboard.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So definitely not the Tron player because it shuts down their whole deck, but also not the Cascade player because when you cascade without paying any mana for the spell. And by paying no mana, Void Mirror sees it and it counters the spell. Okay. So none of those things are an option.
Yes. Okay, so we have a very one-sided, I would argue, situation on the board with Dot Not Seer seizing the Crushcade player, but there are still 4 very angry rhinos on the board, covering this beautiful, beautiful play. Beautiful,
just so popping.
Yeah, and I do believe that we see. Also, Violent Outburst in the hand of the Crushcade player, which gives 1 power to all creatures.
+1/+0. That's right. Yes, and we see, as should be, Metis for blockers, all-in attack. If they block the least power creature, they will probably die. And now we see the blocks as they should be, 1 in front of each rhino. But there is a hidden mode on Violent Outburst. And that is, as you said, it can be played as a pump spell.
Yes.
It's a 3-mana pump spell in Gruul, which I think in this case is more than enough. Of course, the added benefit is of putting 10 power on the board, in this case via Crashing Footfalls. But besides from that, this spell now has put up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more power on the board.
Exactly.
Which is relevant because they all have trample.
Very important to note. These rhinos are angry and have trample.
Exactly. So this is 5, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16 damage coming across, with 3 of them being unblocked, and the 2 are getting to trample over. And only 1 of the rhinos will die.
Also, there are 2 new rhinos that are untapped for, I guess, good measure.
Yeah.
And one of those... Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the one that dies just got untapped, so the board is represented as it should be.
Yes. Okay, top decking another Violent Outburst. Crushcade showing... this is some great showing from Crushcade. If I wanted to showcase what this deck can do, I think this is an amazing match to see what this deck can do.
Yes, exactly. And not only because... but we have a game changer. All is dust.
All is dust.
I was about to say that Eldrazi Tron player does not play any board waves, but apparently I was wrong. But not all is over. There are creatures in the deck that do not can be put there as creatures and not as tokens. And this is actually an extremely exciting matchup because, as you said, we got to see both sides doing their thing, both sides developing, both sides going back and forth. And now the Eldrazi Tron player is down on life, but they are the ones with a threat in a 3/2, a Matter Reshaper, the most dreaded creature in modern format.
Of course, let's not forget that there is still Brazen Borrower on the adventure
Exactly.
for the Crashcade player. And as I mentioned, he did top deck another Violent Outburst. And if I'm not mistaken, again, he has one more copy of Rhinos in his deck.
There should be, yes. They usually play 4 because it is not unusual to suspend one on turn 1 and then fire ice and counter your way to turn 5 where they will arrive happily. This is an Eldrazi Smasher. This is meaningful pressure.
Yes, this is a lot of damage.
Yes. But we will see, actually, with the Violent Outburst, the Rhinos get to be 5/4s.
Well, I think if he plays Brazen Borrower at the end of the Eldrazi Tron player's turn, and then buffs
Just attacks.
and buffs attack by 1 with Violent Outburst, that's 4 damage, and it adds to that 16 damage that he did.
Yeah, that should be enough.
That should be lethal if we didn't miss some kind of live game. Which we could, we are admiring our new playmat that will be available for everyone.
Yeah, but also now the Brazen Borrower is out of the question, but another Violent Outburst puts 8 power.
Yes, that's even true.
Which cannot be mowed down by the Ballista counters. And we see the contents of the deck, almost the full deck, as the player just goes through all of those cards, Endurance, and finally Crashing Footfalls on the battlefield. The Eldrazi Tron player in shaking their head in disbelief. That's 8 power on the board. Two of them can be blocked, and that's more than enough to just finish the game. So game 1 done. While they are shuffling for game 2 and deciding their sideboard options, we invite all of you who find this content entertaining to like, share, subscribe, praise Clotis and all of the other magic gods, and show your love to this channel.
In the comment section.
In the comment section, exactly.
Yeah, of course, we read all of your comments and we listen to them. Hence, we are implementing the deck lists. Yay! Okay, great. So, yeah, you have more than enough time to like, share, and subscribe, and tell your mom about us. Maybe your mom would like to.
That's somewhere where we don't want to go. But and nevertheless, now is a great time to talk again about Lurrus ban.
Yeah, and that's much better.
So there has been some tweets and some sayings around the internet about Lurrus being banned. Is that 3-drops are now unbanned?
Yeah, and this is a stretch. I feel I've seen many people, and I've heard many of our friends that we play Magic with that are junk players. They are very happy. They say things like, "Oh, finally I can play Liliana again," and I'm not convinced. I don't think this ban made Liliana a good modern card.
You don't think so?
No, because Lurrus brought a lot of value to decks like Jund, to decks like Grixis Death Shadow, but now these decks, I feel, are lacking card advantage, and the card that became better than it was is a card like Seasoned Pyromancer that gives the card advantage of sorts, unlike Liliana. So that's my argument. Liliana is a great card, but I think more value to Seasoned Pyromancer.
I mean, yes, definitely, but both of them are 3-drops and they are competing in Jund specifically for the same slot. I would go as far as to say that Liliana itself herself is card advantage engine, not in the way that she provides card advantage, but in the way that Jund top decks better than most decks. Jund, the old Jund, the boomer Jund, was the mid-rangest of mid-range decks that existed. And now it's probably starting to turn back to this role. And Jund is the police of the format. If you cannot beat Jund, you probably, and this is a stretch, but this is with quotation marks, you probably should not play your pet deck. This is not to say that you need to have 90 to 10% against Jund. But Jund is always a deck to keep in back of your mind when you are building or trying to choose decks to compete with in the modern format. Now, there are still new cards added to Jund, definitely. DRC, Ragavan, even Saga, even if you would like to go with a Renin 6 route, all of those things make for perfectly playable flavors of Jund. But I was talking more about something like Death Shadow. Death Shadow is a deck that needed to remove street rates from their deck in order to play Lurrus in the sideboard. Also, a giant boon for something like the Death Shadow is Murktide Regent, that they couldn't have played because Lurrus was so good at providing card advantage and being omnipresent. This is what I meant with 3 drops are now unlocked. There are several other decks that had to choose. For example, all the Stoneblade decks had to choose between Nettled Cyst, all the Swords, and Kaldra and Batterskull, or they could play Lurrus in the sideboard, because all of those things are incompatible with the clause that you need to have 2 drops or less in your main board. So now there is much more options than before, because Lurrus was so dominant and so prevalent and so good of a card advantage, even with the tax of 3 extra mana to put your companion in your hand from the companion zone. They were actually so good, and by they I mean Lurrus. But now the diversity became even more prevalent, because now there will be several types, several flavors of Death Shadow. There will be dozens of flavors of Stoneblades. There will probably be even Hammer Time will have several flavors of the deck. Other decks, as you said, Jund. Maybe somebody makes a big Jund deck with Mana Dorks and 4 drops and Claudius, and 5 drops, maybe some dragons. The usual quote-unquote Jund that played Lilianas, maybe Seasoned Pyromancers, maybe something in that realm is also quote-unquote unlocked, and so back and so forth.
It's a very wise topic, and frankly, we should make like
a whole
video
essay
about
or a
this.
video about it.
Yeah, and if anyone is interested, we can make that. You should tell us in comments. We read your comments. We listen to them. But let's get into the game. We see a very strong start from Eldrazi Tron with Chalice on 0, which of course prevents cascades.
Yes. So it prevents the 0-drop cascades, not all cascaded spells.
Of course.
But in the Temur Crashcade deck, the only thing that you can cascade into, as we said, is the Rhinos.
The angry Rhinos.
Yes.
So if you play Rhinos for their suspend cost, and when the suspend cost goes to 0 and you cast them, you again cast them for 0, and Chalice again counters them. So it counters both modes of Rhinos, which is quite important to say. Of course, the Crushcade player ready for that Chalice, and the Rhinos are again here.
Yes. So Brazen Borrower is a fantastic card by itself, but also in the Crushcade deck, just flexing on all cylinders, bouncing back and forth. If you need to lower the pressure, just bounce a creature. If you need to get rid of a pesky permanent, such as, for example, the Fairy, or Chalice on 0, or any other pesky permanent, just bounce it at the end of the player's turn. And the best part is it costs 2 mana, and you can untap it into 3 mana, requisite for your Crushcade. So we see also another Thought-Knot Seer being played, and this is the hand of the Teamer player. So Jace the Mind Sculptor, also a card that you don't see so much in Modern.
And you don't see, frankly, do you see it in Crushcade? I'm not even sure.
Maybe 1 or 2 copies, yes.
Yeah, but okay. You definitely don't play like 4 copies of this card.
But none of the decks play 4 copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor, even if they are blue-white control. They play maybe 2 or 3, because the small and big Teferi are, frankly, good.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Thought-Knot Seer choosing Jace.
Exactly. And Jace being exiled, and the Chalice of the Void being played on 0. Unfortunately, Force of Negation showing just at the wrong time.
Wrong time, definitely wrong time.
Yes.
But okay, you can pay 3 mana to cast it.
No, I meant for countering the Chalice.
Yeah.
We see a land being played, and masses for blockers, of course. 8 trampling damage coming across into the red zone. How will the
opponent react?
The player block? 1 block here, of course. Matter Reshaper providing card advantage in form of either a permanent with mana value 2 or less being placed on the battlefield, or a card in your hand.
Exactly. Jumping, drawing, playing. This card has it all.
Oh, that is a Walking Ballista that will probably, yes, exactly, end up in the opponent's hand. And this Jace was exiled long ago. That is, if I am correct, 6 trampling damage coming over to the player on the right. Another Eldrazi Temple being played. And we saw All is Dust the last game. If there are any more in the sideboard, I suppose they will be coming in.
I would definitely think so.
But this is also a 7 mana card that is hard to cast.
Yeah, it's difficult to cast, especially with no Tron.
No Tron, but do keep in mind it is a tribal sorcery. It's an Eldrazi tribal sorcery. True. Eldrazi Temple does count as 2 against this to lower the cost of this spell. Here we see the fire mode of Fire and Ice dealing 1 damage to the Walking Ballista and 1 damage to the player's face. Probably the player on the right sacked the Ballista before the damage was done to it. So 1 damage to the one player's face, the other damage to the other player's face, and this was all in the end step. Stomping Ground is being fetched, and the Crushcade player untaps with casual 10 power on board. And still Brazen Borrower in the adventure zone.
Yeah, very, very long adventure for this Brazen Borrower. But he comes when he is needed.
This is also a flash threat that can be just played at the end step if there are no other things to be played.
Yes, but it seems like the Crushcade player is very content. Okay, this is Dismember, is it?
Which member? Okay, this joke is getting old. It's Dismember getting played for its alternative cost by paying 4 life, but there is Force of Negation countering the spell, and yes, now the player is obliged to block. 1 damage, 2 damage coming through one card being drawn, one Rhino supposedly dead exactly. Not in the graveyard, yes. Tokens do not go in the graveyard. They touch the graveyard, but then they just
disappear.
Yes. Still the Chalice on one. They're on the battlefield, but if you have 10 power on the board, chances are you do not need any more.
Yeah, the Crushcade player very content with the situation on board. He just, he just pressured the Eldrazi player into acting and then responded accordingly. Generally, there is definitely a slight advantage to the Crushcade player, I think, and I feel that in general this deck has a slight advantage over the Eldrazi Tron. I might be mistaken.
Would you say it is because they play more colors?
We are full of jokes today. I would say that the tempo that this deck provides is
exceptional.
I would say it's too much for Eldrazi Tron to bear.
You think so? This is a fun card that is not seeing a lot of modern play. This is Seagate Restoration, which reads, you can tap it and 3 other lands. If you control no cards in your hand, draw a card. A very powerful effect on a land spell, although drawing a card, not having cards in your hand is not something that you would hope to be where you would hope to be, but with 2 more lands being drawn, this is game 2 and match being won by the Crushcade player on the left.
Yeah, with no outs, the Eldrazi player just scoops and shakes the hand. Great match. I really enjoyed. I really enjoy watching Crushcade in general. So I do hope all of you also enjoyed the match. If you did, like, share, and subscribe.